Hey, Regal here. You guys seemed to really like it when I did this last time, so I figured let's get back into it with another SCP. One thing about the Foundation I really didn't get to delve into last time was that the scale and the actual feel of the Foundation. That, it's a very powerful and far-reaching organization, but today's SCP showcases that very well. Today, viewers, we will be looking at SCP-096, or the Shy Guy. Do you know the story of Medusa? The woman who was cursed by the gods to turn people to stone at a glance? How she had to live her life removed from society and became cold and angry, attacking anyone who'd intrude upon her life of isolation. The anomaly of today is kind of similar. 096 doesn't like to be looked at, and will go to drastic lengths to prevent such a thing from occurring. Once again, keep in mind that this is an early SCP and shows the characteristics as such. Alright, let's get started. SCP-096 Object Class Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-096 is to be contained in its cell, a 5 meter by 5 meter by 5 meter airtight steel cube at all times. Weekly checks for any cracks or holes are mandatory. There are absolutely no video surveillance or optical tools of any kind inside SCP-096's cell. Security personnel will use pre-installed pressure sensors and laser detectors to ensure SCP-096's presence inside the cell. Any and all photo, video, or recordings of SCP-096's likeness are strictly forbidden without approval from Dr. and O5. Description: SCP-096 is a humanoid creature measuring approximately 2.38 meters in height. Subject shows very little muscle mass, with preliminary analysis of body mass suggesting mild malnutrition. Arms are grossly out of proportion with the rest of subject's body, with an approximate length of 1.5 meters each. Skin is mostly devoid of pigmentation, with no sign of body hair. SCP-096's jaw can open up to 4 times the norm of an average human. Other facial features remain similar to an average human, with the exception of the eyes, which are also devoid of pigmentation. It is not known yet whether SCP-096 is blind or not. It shows no signs of any higher brain functions and is not considered to be sapient. SCP-096 is normally extremely docile, with pressure sensors indicating it spends most of its day pacing by the eastern wall. However, when someone views SCP-096's face, whether it be directly via video recording or even a photograph, it will enter a stage of considerable emotional distress. SCP-096 will cover its face with its hands and begin screaming, crying, and babbling incoherently. Approximately 1 to 2 minutes after the first viewing, SCP-096 will run to the person who viewed its face, who from this point on will be referred to as SCP-096-1. Documented speeds have varied from 35 kilometers to kilometers, and seems to depend on the distance from SCP-096-1. At this point, no known material or method can impede 096's progress. The actual position of SCP-096-1 does not seem to affect SCP-096's response. It seems to have an innate sense of SCP-096's location. Note: this reaction does not occur when viewing artistic depictions. See Document 096-1. Upon arriving at SCP-096-1's location, SCP-096 will proceed to kill and SCP-096-1. 100% of the cases have left no traces of SCP-096-1. SCP-096 will then sit down for several minutes before regaining its composure and becoming docile once again. It will then attempt to make its way back to its natural habitat, due to the possibility of a mass chain reaction including breach of Foundation secrecy and large civilian loss of life. Retrieval of the subject should be considered alpha priority. Dr. Redacted has also petitioned for an immediate termination of SCP-096. See Interview 096-1. Now before I get into my circle back of my parallel from earlier, let me go ahead and address a few things. So, number one, that interview that it spoke about and the incident, I don't really want to go over them because every YouTube channel on the planet has gone over that story of SCP-096. So I'm going to go ahead, okay, essentially, the way the Foundation found out about it, is that the doctor from earlier, the one who was redacted, but his name is Dr. Daniel, he basically stuck a pixel of SCP-096's face inside a picture. And it was in the middle of the mountains, and this poor guy just saw it. And then out of nowhere, it just breaks out and kills the guy. And then it doubles back and starts killing everybody who saw its face before. Dr. Daniel did that to prove a point that SCP-096 needs to be terminated. And, well, as such, he was terminated alongside it. Now, to my knowledge, there is no canon way. There are a few SCPs that are believed that could do it, one of them being 173, which we talked about last episode. Yeah, so with all that being said, do you remember my parallel of Medusa earlier? Most Foundation personnel believe SCP-096 to be sentient and aware of its plight, but some don't as well. And a tale by fellow YouTuber SCP Illustrated, I'll link the video I'm talking about in the description, details a mysterious and tragic origin for it. But rather than just do his tale, I'm going to go over at least one of the extermination tests between SCP-096 versus SCP-682. But before I do, I'm going to go over what SCP-682 is. SCP-682 is also called the hard-to-destroy reptile, and it's essentially just a really big crocodile, essentially, that is hard to destroy. Foundation personnel have tried, like, whenever a new SCP comes in, the first thing we do is try and kill 682 with it, and we have not been successful yet. The idea is that it can adapt almost instantaneously and perfectly to any single idea to it. Now, in the 173 video, I talked about how about, what did I say, 150 of them ganged up and tore it to shreds. Technically, yes. According to Foundation lore, 150 of SCP-173 could kill 682. We don't know that, though, but it's just a tale. To knowledge, there is not a single thing that's done it. However, this fight between 682 and 096 is one of my favorite termination tests. And if you guys like it, when I do the 682 video, I'll probably have to double around and just do a separate video about all the termination tests of 682. But either way, let's get into it. Test log T-98816-OC108-682. Cross SCP termination testing for SCP-682. Due to the highly aggressive, adaptive, and intelligent nature of SCP-682, termination testing has been ordered, with clearance from O5 Command. With major concerns raised about possible developed immunities due to the failure of SCP-409 and possible adaptations, all tests must first be carried out by tissue samples from SCP-682. This step may be bypassed only by O5 Command order. Item: SCP-096 Tissue Test Record. Non-applicable. Termination Test Record. Containment tank containing SCP-096 was placed in SCP-682's cell. Personnel vacated vicinity and the tank was opened remotely. Screams of the two entities continue for 27 hours, at which point the noise abruptly stops. Solar-based video feeds reveal SCP-096 severely wounded and huddled in the southwest corner, apparently upset. Feed shows SCP-682 on the north end of the room, approximately 85% of its initial mass absent. Recontainment teams retrieve both entities with relative ease. Further attempts to expose SCP-096 to 682 cause it to turn away from 682, jumping in place while clawing at its face and screaming. I assure you, not every test against SCP-682 is so tiny, but, you know, they couldn't monitor it for obvious reasons. But you have to imagine what happened in there as soon as SCP-682 looked at 096. As soon as the reptile saw the face of the shy guy, you have to imagine, it must have been a bloodbath. 85% of its mass. And 096 is severely wounded. That is just crazy to think about. And it's scared of 682. Most things are, but something that isn't sentient is scared of it. It is a wild idea to imagine what those two are capable of. So, that's about everything on 096. I skipped over a lot because there's just so many videos out there and I'm not going to be able to emulate them. So, once again, I do encourage you to look into it for yourself if it interests you, and leave me a recommendation for what kind of ones you want to see and if you want the series to keep going. I believe next time we're going to tackle SCP 106, or the Old Man, for those of you who know your numbers. And yeah, as always, I will catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye! See interview 096-1. Order... I don't know how to do that. I don't know how I can convey that audibly. I don't know how I can convey that audibly. It's scratched out, but it's okay.